What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, be sure to go down below the video, hit that thumbs up button, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Today, yet again, we are diving into the world of retro gaming with the Miyoo Mini Plus. And I do want to give a huge thanks to the team over at Miyoo for sending over this transparent purple Miyoo Mini Plus for review. Now let's go ahead and kick things off by taking a look at what comes inside of the box. The packaging is simple and small, and inside we've got the handheld itself. We also have a full color setup guide, a USB Type-C cable, a micro SD card to USB-A adapter, and even a glass screen protector. Now, my first initial impressions of the device fresh out of the packaging is that it is actually fairly compact, and it does feel pretty light in your hands, but not necessarily in a cheap way, if that makes any sense. And the screen on the device takes up over 50% of the front-facing real estate for the entire handheld, which is actually pretty nice. Now let's go ahead and go through the specs. The Miyoo Mini Plus comes with the SigmaStar SSD202D SoC. Now that is an ARM Cortex A7 dual-core processor that's going to be clocked in at 1.2 gigahertz. That's actually coupled with 128 megabytes of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. Now, in terms of the screen, it has a 3.5-inch IPS display carrying a resolution of 640 by 480, which is great for retro gaming. It also has a 3000 milliamp hour rechargeable battery, USB-C charging, and it even has built-in Wi-Fi. Now, in hand, the Miyoo Mini Plus takes up your whole palm, and it's not that much bigger than a deck of cards. Because of how compact it is, you don't really get that tight, comfortable hold because you aren't really able to cradle it comfortably. That, stacked with a very smooth, untextured finish of the body, makes the device feel a little bit loose in your hands. Now, I would have liked to see some sort of textured grips along the side or the back of the device somewhere, but it is, however, still fairly comfortable to hold for extended play sessions, even without the textured grips, assuming you aren't moving around too much. Now, the D-pad on it, though, is quite nice, very responsive, and it's a great size. And in terms of the action buttons, they're very simple and inspired by the Super Nintendo layout, and they are responsive as well. Plus, the shoulder buttons are definitely a nice addition. They are large, very responsive, and I'd say that they're mostly comfortable. And what I mean by that is the L2 and R2 buttons are raised slightly higher than the L1 and R1 buttons to make it easier to feel with your fingers. You essentially control all four of those buttons simply with your two index fingers, and although this is not necessarily ideal, it does work well enough for most of the games that you are even able to run on the device in the first place, so I think it is good enough. The battery is housed at the back as well, and that does add some thickness, which does contribute to actually a more comfortable grip overall. Powering it up, we are greeted by a custom Linux OS running RetroArch in the background to take care of all of the emulation. The OS is super simple, which is actually great for newcomers, but it doesn't really feel all that polished, and there isn't a ton of customization that can be done outside of just changing the display themes from right within the settings option. Now, making adjustments within RetroArch is also a little bit cumbersome, so I'd say that this device is really for someone who just wants to pick up the handheld, choose a title, play it, and that's pretty much it. The OS is easy to navigate regardless to find the game you are looking for, so ultimately it does really do what it's supposed to do. Now, as far as game performance is concerned, the Miyoo Mini Plus is what I'd call an entry-level handheld. It handles most retro games up to and including PlayStation 1. Game Boy Advanced games are a particular highlight despite the screen not actually being a true 3:2 aspect ratio. The screen size, color saturation, brightness, shoulder buttons, all of those things make for an awesome experience. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and even arcade titles work really well, unsurprisingly, as well. Now, with these devices, I always like to test Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo, and that's because it tends to be one of the harder to emulate games for Super Nintendo, and it's not uncommon for some of these lower priced handhelds to really struggle with that title to run it at full speed. But it did perform beautifully with little to no frame drops, so I would actually give that a pass altogether. I also tested a bunch of PlayStation 1 games and they all ran really well, again without much of any frame drops. And although many PS1 games do not require analog sticks, there are still a handful you cannot play on this device. An example would be Ape Escape without those analog sticks. And I would also say that you shouldn't expect to run more intensive games on this thing like PSP, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, or N64 with the way that it is, or without some sort of custom operating system. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the battery life on this thing is decent. It has a 3000 milliamp hour battery that can give you somewhere between 5 to 6 hours of gameplay on a single charge. Now that might not be groundbreaking, but in my experience these handhelds are something that you pick up and play for an hour or two at a time, so 5 to 6 hours should be plenty even if you are a passenger on a long road trip or something like that. Now, pricing for this device does sit around $80 depending on where you buy it from, but is there really enough value here to justify the price? I would say that if you're a retro gaming enthusiast looking for a portable option and you don't really want to mess around with customization and just want to, take something out of the box, turn it on and play a game, it's actually a pretty good deal. Now, if you are somebody who wants something more powerful to play N64 or PSP on the go, you should definitely consider more powerful options. And I will say that I have enjoyed using this thing, and it has been my go-to to use for specifically retro handheld gaming for the last few weeks. Now, to wrap things up, the Miyoo Mini Plus is an affordable, well-built, and highly portable retro gaming console. And although it does have its flaws, particularly with the operating system, it's still actually a solid choice for those who love retro gaming on the go. Now, as always, I will leave some links in the description down below for you to pick one up, or even if you just want to read a little bit more about the handheld itself. But that is actually pretty much all I've got for you guys in this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will talk to you guys again real soon.